The rain tapped gently against the old wooden house, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the chaos inside Kato's mind. He sat alone in his small room overlooking the narrow alley of Kyoto, staring at the same cup of green tea that had gone cold hours ago. There were days he felt as if time was moving without him, pulling him helplessly forward while his habits, his addictions, his endless loops kept dragging him back. Tonight felt like one of those days, heavy, quiet, and revealing. For years he had tried to break free from the behaviors that controlled him. It wasn't something dramatic or destructive, it was the small habits that stole minutes, then hours, then entire days. Scrolling endlessly on his phone, skipping important work, delaying everything until the last moment, falling into patterns he promised himself he would escape. Every night he whispered the same sentence into the dark, "Tomorrow will be different." And every morning, he found himself living the same cycle once again. He wasn't weak, he wasn't irresponsible, he was simply human, trapped in the web of his own routines. One evening, as the wind brushed softly against the shoji doors, Kato's grandfather visited him. The old man walked with a slow, deliberate calm, carrying a small wooden box that seemed almost sacred. Without saying a word, he placed the box on Kato's table, slid it toward him, and sat opposite him with a peaceful smile. Inside the box were three small objects: a tiny notebook, a smooth river stone, and a piece of red string. Kato looked at them, confused, but his grandfather simply closed his eyes and spoke. "There is a Japanese truth," he said, voice quiet but unwavering. "A person does not break a habit. A habit breaks itself, when you stop feeding it." Kato raised his eyes, listening. "Kaizen," his grandfather continued, "is the art of becoming 1% better today than you were yesterday. But Kaizen is not only improvement. It is forgiveness. It is acknowledging that change lives in the smallest actions, not the loudest promises." The old man gestured to the notebook. "This is where you record one small action. Not a plan to change your entire life. Just one step." Then he touched the stone. "This is a reminder of weight. Every habit you carry has heaviness. But the moment you make a different choice, even a small one, the weight begins to lift." Finally, he lifted the red string. "And this," he said softly, "is for commitment. A habit becomes weaker when you replace it with something meaningful. That meaning, your reason for becoming better, is your Ikigai." Kato felt a stillness settle inside him. He had heard the word Ikigai many times before, but never truly understood it. Ikigai wasn't passion, it wasn't destiny, it was a gentle question: what makes your life feel worth living? That question, he realized, was the one thing he had been avoiding. His grandfather stood slowly and walked toward the door, leaving Kato with the box and the silent weight of understanding. For a long time, Kato didn't move. The house was quiet except for the distant sound of the rain becoming softer, almost comforting. After a moment, he opened the notebook. The pages were blank, untouched, waiting patiently for the first word. Kato breathed deeply and wrote a single sentence: "Tonight, I will not run from myself." It wasn't a goal, it wasn't a promise, it was simply an intention, fragile but honest. He set the stone on top of the notebook and felt its cool surface, grounding him. The stone reminded him of the habits he had carried for years, heavy and silent. Yet, holding it made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: control. The red string lay beside his hand. He tied it loosely around his wrist, feeling its soft texture. It didn't bind him, it reminded him. Ikigai was not something to be discovered in a dramatic moment. It revealed itself slowly, like dawn rising over the mountains. The room seemed different now, not brighter, but clearer. The air felt lighter, as if something inside him had shifted. He knew his habits wouldn't disappear overnight. He knew the old patterns would still call to him. But for the first time, he felt he had something stronger than willpower. He had understanding. Outside, the rain stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the faint glow of lanterns. Kato watched the droplets slide down the glass and realized something simple: change does not happen when the world becomes easier. It happens when we decide to move, even when everything feels heavy. He closed the notebook, placed all three objects carefully back in the wooden box, and whispered to himself, "One step." It was small, almost invisible, but it was the beginning. Scene 2 begins with the story shifting from the quiet shrine into the life of a man who represents millions, someone trapped between the memory of who he once wanted to be and the reality of the habits that now control him. His name, for the sake of the story, is Haruto. He is not a villain, not weak, not broken, just an ordinary person who slowly slipped into routines that carried him far away from his purpose. The Japanese call this drift mubo, the silent wandering of a person who has forgotten their path. Haruto sits by the window of his small Tokyo apartment, the city glowing beneath him like a field of restless fireflies. Every night he tells himself he will change tomorrow, and every morning he returns to the habits he swore he would leave behind. Not because he wants to, but because they have become fused with his identity. And this, according to Japanese psychological philosophy, is the most dangerous part of addiction. It doesn't just grip your actions, it quietly rewrites your story. The turning point comes not from a dramatic collapse, but from a very subtle moment. One morning, while walking to the train station, Haruto notices an elderly man sweeping the steps of a tiny neighborhood temple. The man moves slowly and deliberately, taking his time, clearing each fallen leaf as though performing a sacred ritual. Haruto watches him for a moment. There is no rush, no stress, no frantic energy, only quiet, mindful presence. In that moment, something inside Haruto stirs, something he had long forgotten, the awareness that life is made of small actions, and that every action is a vote for the person you are becoming. The old man looks up and smiles gently, as if he can see the storm Haruto carries inside. He motions Haruto to step closer and asks him a simple question: what is the smallest thing you can change today? Haruto freezes. He expects something complicated, a lecture, some kind of spiritual test, but the man only repeats the question. This is the essence of Kaizen, the smallest possible positive improvement, repeated until it changes the architecture of your life. Haruto decides to try it, not to break all his habits at once, not to become a new person overnight, not to fight himself. Only one tiny action. That evening, instead of spending 3 hours scrolling endlessly, he puts his phone away for 5 minutes. Just 5. It feels insignificant, almost foolish, yet something interesting happens. For that small moment, he feels control returning to his hands. And for the first time in years, he feels a flicker of discipline, small, but alive. The next day he does it again. 5 minutes of reclaiming his attention. Then 7 minutes. Then 10. He isn't trying to destroy the habit, he is trying to weaken the ritual that feeds it. According to Japanese behavioral philosophy, habits aren't chains you break, they are threads you slowly untangle. Slowly, Kaizen begins reshaping Haruto's life. He starts placing tiny reminders around his apartment, a sticky note near the door saying, "Breathe," a single book next to his bed titled, "One Change," and a glass of water placed strategically next to his phone charger to remind him to start his night with clarity, not distraction. None of these things are large or impressive, but they redirect his attention toward the identity he is trying to rebuild. But even with these improvements, the underlying addiction still stirs within him, whispering that he will eventually fail. This is where Ikigai quietly enters his life, not as a grand revelation, but as a question the old man asked him the second time they met: what is something small that makes your life feel meaningful? Haruto doesn't know. He hasn't thought about meaning in years. But he begins searching for it in ordinary moments, drinking tea slowly, sketching for a few minutes each night, calling his mother once a week instead of once a month. Bit by bit, Ikigai gives him a reason to move forward. He learns that the opposite of addiction is not self-control, it is purpose. People don't escape their habits by fighting them, they outgrow them. The Japanese say that meaning is the anchor that prevents the mind from drifting back to the storms it once lived in. As Haruto continues with these tiny rituals, his identity shifts. He is no longer a man trying to quit a habit, he is someone practicing discipline, building calm, and reconnecting with a deeper purpose. And when temptation returns, as it always does, it no longer feels like a prison. It feels like a test he has prepared for, because he has built the strength to face it one small step at a time. By the end of the scene, Haruto is not transformed fully, nor is he cured. That is not how real life works. But he is moving, he is improving, he is winning tiny battles each day, and those victories begin rewriting the story inside his mind. This is the hidden Japanese truth. Change doesn't come from dramatic moments, it grows quietly, patiently, through consistent, meaningful steps. And as Haruto closes his eyes that night, he finally understands the old man's wisdom: the smallest change is never small if it shifts the direction of your life.